Good day po, fellow colleagues in the UP system. Before we begin the session, may I request my fellow panel members to please uh, unmute yourselves and show us your face in the Zoom session so that our participants can recognize us. So we already have with us Professor Olivia Mendoza, one of our panel members. Ma'am Paula Sioco is also with us already from UP Manila. We already have Professor Liza Ocampo from UP Diliman. We already have with us Professor Marga Taganas from UPLB, and of course, Professor Liza Ocampo from UP Diliman. Right? So I think we could now start the session. Right? So again, good morning, everyone, and welcome po to the Ethics 1 session of the GE Conversations. I am Vlad Bumatay, Assistant Professor of Philosophy from UP Baguio, and I will be your moderator for this morning's session. With me also as assistant moderator is Ms. Karen De Castro, instructor in philosophy, also from UP Baguio. Okay. So the GE Conversations with the theme Baon-Bidahan, how did you teach GEX in your CU, is the highlight of this year's UP System GE Conference. In contrast to the GE conferences we had in Mount Balarayat, Lipa, Batangas in 2017, and in UP Diliman in 2018, which focus on the development and teaching of the new GE courses, respectively. This year's GE Conference, through the GE Conversations, endeavors to confront the challenges and prospects of teaching our new GE courses, especially in the context of the worldwide health emergency we're all facing at the moment. Specifically, the GE Conversation aims to reflect on the teaching of GE in time of crisis, to rearticulate the relevance of GE philosophy, and lastly, to reinvigorate the teaching and learning of GE. To achieve these general aims, each GE panel is tasked to share the reflections of the following themes. Right? The first theme or talking point is the relevance of GE. The second are the innovations and strategies explored in the preparation of course packs, assessment tools, and classroom management. And lastly, on the opportunities and challenges that we are currently facing in the teaching of GE in the current pandemic. To kickstart this Ethics 1 session of the GE Conversations, allow me now to introduce our esteemed panel members according to the order of their sharing. Right? The first member of our panel is Dr. Maria Liza Ruth Ocampo from UP Diliman. Professor Liza is currently a professor in the Department of Philosophy and the coordinator of the Office of the Graduate Program, College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, University of the Philippines, Diliman. She obtained her Bachelor of Arts cum laude and her Master of Arts degrees in philosophy from the same institution where she teaches ethics, metaphysics, philosophical analysis, and the history of ideas with a particular stress on medieval philosophy. She was awarded the UP Diliman Centennial Professorial Chair in 2008 and 2010 respectively for the following works: The Dignity of the Thinking Person, a philosophical reflection on human nature, published by UST in 2006, and the article essay, Man's Definition in Thomas Aquinas' De Unitate Intellectus contra Averroistas, Some Doctrinal and Historical Considerations, published 2008. She finished her licentiate and doctoral programs in philosophy at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross, Rome, Italy. Her stay in the Eternal City of Rome served as a turning point in her understanding and study and appreciation of each and every human person in action. Professor Liza will discuss with us the relevance of Ethics 1 as a GE. We also have with us, as the second member of our panel, Dr. Maria Paula Sioco. Professor Paula is an associate professor in philosophy and a former associate dean for planning and development, college secretary, and chair of the Department of Social Sciences at the College of Arts and Sciences in the University of the Philippines, Manila. She is a member of the UP Manila Research Ethics Board, which reviews the ethical propriety of research protocols dealing with human participants. She also wrote a book entitled Introduction to the Philosophy of the Human Person. She graduated from UP Diliman with AB Philosophy, cum laude, MA Philosophy, and also PhD in Philippine Studies. Her doctoral dissertation is about the forms and patterns of moral reasoning of UP students. Prof. Paula, together with her UP Manila colleague, Professor Kaslib, will share with us the reflections about the Ethics 1 course pack, its preparation, the resources that they used, among others. I am also happy to introduce Professor Olivia S. Mendoza, the third member of our panel. Prof. Olive is an assistant professor of philosophy at the Department of History and Philosophy, College of Social Sciences, University of the Philippines, Baguio. Her current research interests lie at the interface of philosophy of emotions, history of philosophy, and ethics. Her paper, entitled Reviewing Emotion Theories in Light of Filipino Emotions, is recipient of the Mateo Tupas Faculty Grant from the University of the Philippines, Baguio. Prof. Olive will share with us today the strategies and innovations in assessment and classroom management that she and her UP Baguio colleagues implemented in their online classrooms. The last member of our panel is Professor Krissah Marga Taganas. Prof. Marga is an assistant professor of philosophy at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Prof. Marga obtained her Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy from the same university and did her undergraduate student exchange program in Far East University, South Korea. Prof. Marga finished her Master of Arts in Philosophy at UP Diliman, where she became a recipient of the International Honor Society of Pi Kappa Phi official membership in recognition of her graduate academic record. Her main areas of research are feminist philosophy, feminist pragmatism, socio-political philosophy, and women and gender studies. Prof. Marga will share with us the challenges that she and her philosophy colleagues in UPLB encountered in their teaching of Ethics 1 during this pandemic. So our session will proceed with the panel sharing first. Right? Each panel member will be given 5 minutes to share their insights about the talking points assigned to them. After the sharing, we will proceed with the Q&A session. For your questions, you may send them through the link that the OVPAA staff will post in our chat box, or you can also unmute yourself and raise your question. Also, while we are calling it a Q&A session, it is not strictly for questions only. We actually encourage any participant to share also their insights and experiences about the talking points. Right? You may inform us of your intention to share later on by chatting in the chat box or by unmuting yourself. Right? While the session is ongoing, may we remind everyone to unmute their microphones. Without further ado, we can now proceed with our panel sharing with Professor Liza Ocampo sharing her insights about the relevance of ethics as a GE. Prof. Liza.
Good morning to everyone. This is a very good venue for exchange and precisely dialogue and hopefully more learning as we delve into what does it mean to teach ethics in this time of pandemic and also in our unit. So we know that we human persons can contextualize our situation in time and space, and we are living in historical and trying times. not just for us in the academe, but all men since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. No? We can see that we are living in a time of crisis and hopefully a time of transformation. And hopefully, since we are in academe, we will be living a time of learning. And in this cluster, in the Ethics 1 cluster, we are tasked to reflect on our experiences in teaching ethics in these challenging times. We know that Pope Alexander Pope said in one of his books, and I'm lifting this from the book of Percy Thomas, that in the Message in the Bottle, he says, the proper study of man is man. But we know that it's really a large order, especially nowadays, when there is no such a thing as a study of man, but about 200 specialities, which study this or that aspect of man. And in the past 2 years, Ethics 1, in the context of the GE program, philosophy of the system, has just started as a GE subject in all of the units, except still in Diliman, but in the rest of the units, it is a GE course. So in this conversation, I would like to refer to you the paper that was read in 2015 in the UP Diliman General Education Program Reflection. And this is a paper presented by Professor Robin Rivera of the College of Arts and Letters. And he quoted, this was 2014, December 31, 2014. He quoted Armando Benefacio of the Philosophy Department regarding the ongoing review, understanding, and the welfare of the GE program in the University of the Philippine System. And it's in the context of its philosophy of education. And I quote, the current intense efforts being mobilized to shape what is now known as the general education program are designed primarily to meet some social problems which the university can help solve. One of them is securing for the youth of the country that kind of education that would make them active contributors to making of a better and more progressive Filipino nation. And in reaction to that position paper, I am quoting our chairman at that time, Dr. Siriaco Saison Jr. Of the Department of Philosophy. In a reaction paper he presented February 17, 2015, in relation to this idea of Dr. Rivera, he said, indeed, many of the discussions of the GE program since the 1950s are informed by a concern of these issues. What are these issues? Literacies, broadening of knowledge, critical thinking, and creativity. Thus, Dr. Tenmatay of the then College of Education wrote of the broadening of education as one of the central aims of the GE. And Ethics 1 precisely helps the students who are in the threshold of their rational powers to precisely broaden their understanding and their experiences, especially of the moral aspect of their existence. He says, and I quote again, a student who has gone through general education realizes that to be educated is to be marked by a general cultivation, by certain scholarly traits, and by an attitude toward learning and the process of thought, rather than by a mere possession of a fund of general information and the mastery of a skill, of a technical skill. This was in the 1950s. We are now in 2021. Somehow it is still the same, that it is not a matter of going to Google, to going to the internet, and to get the desired information. We want to understand about our human actions and the impact of those actions to ourselves and to society in general. And he continues, Dr. Saison continues, he describes the truly educated man as marked not by a possession of a great deal of information, nor by the years spent in mastering an area of knowledge, but by an attitude toward learning and mode of thought and action. Precisely, Ethics 1 is really just so relevant especially nowadays, no? Because it will help us what is the upright thing to do, no? In the context of the dilemmas, no? that we face, no? In this time of pandemic. No? And somehow Ethics 1 will help the student learn to force himself to think, no? To solve problems. No? And somehow the student must constantly strive to express his ideas clearly and concisely in order to develop rational habits of mind. And in the case of ethics, it is how to transform that in one's actions, okay? And somehow to see how these actions will precisely impact, no? On the common good of the others. No? So it is in the line of the tradition of viewing liberal education, no? The way Cardinal Newman in the 19th century, specifically 1852, no, articulated in his Magnus Opus the idea of the university, no, as a kind of integration and wisdom that marks the educated man. No? And precisely ethics is so relevant to attain that integration because it is a journey. It is a learning journey, no? Not just in Ethics 1, but in the other GE subjects provided by the UP system. No? That's why, because Cardinal Newman viewed that, assumes that the unity that is the hallmark of an educated mind is mainly a result of a certain kind of curriculum. No? One where the various branches of learning are given a unity by being shown to radiate from a single main trunk. No? And in Nick Joaquin's, in our national artist's book, no? Culture and History, which is an insightful reflection on the dynamic relationship between history and the culture as experienced by the Filipinos, no? It provides a much needed contextualization on how culture shapes the moral fiber of a person. No? And we know, no, each one of us is living this, that we Filipinos are still in the stage and state of finding our national cultural identity and bearings. No? There is a pressing need to go back to the material and intangible dimensions of our culture, no? And history to understand where we come from, and so as to gain meaning on the different demands of our time. No? I will end this very short presentation reflection, no, that we will be in dialogue later with Socrates on how come Ethics 1 is relevant in these times of pandemic and then the ongoing forging of the GE program. No? Socrates' exhortation of know thyself, no? Note sieton, or in Latin, nociete ipsum, no? Is a turning point in the human being's quest for understanding and self-knowledge. No? And the knowledge that is sought after is one of the most difficult to fathom and to achieve. No? And it needs precisely a lifetime to somehow achieve it. And the speculation that one aims at concerns for true knowledge and terminates in wisdom. No? And precisely what is wisdom? It is somehow applied knowledge to the contingencies of life. No? As in the life of Socrates, as presented by Plato, this quest is realized in conversation, in dialogue. So I end, no, with that idea, and then I give the floor again to our moderator, Professor Bumatay.
Thank you, Ma'am Liza, for that insights about the relevance of Ethics 1 as a GE. Let's proceed to the sharing of Professor Paula Sioco and Professor Kaslib about the Ethics 1 GE, right, and their preparations and the resources that they use in making the Ethics 1 course pack. Right, Professor Paula?
Let me now begin my share screen.
Yes, ma'am.
There are actually two topics that are assigned to us, UP Manila. The Professor Kaslib will give his sample of the course pack on Ethics 1. And also another important issue that the moderator deemed necessary to discuss today is the mental health of our students. So let me now begin. In the virtual classroom setup, we can still apply the principle in loco parentis because we still have the duty to protect our students from foreseeable harm especially the psychological aspect. Some of our students could be having trouble coping with this pandemic. In fact, some of them are under medication from the University Health Service for antidepressants and melatonin tablets. These are just some of the health challenges of our students. The feeling of not being in control of their life, the lack of autonomy and freedom leads to anxiety. They are isolated from their classmates and teachers and not being able to establish connection with them. The feeling of not being able to spontaneously express their emotions and ask questions directly. The feeling of fear in anticipation of the coming class, being ashamed and anxious of being shouted at by the teacher in a virtual classroom setting, because this is still happening today. Some family members are suffering from COVID-19. Some freshies are enrolled in 21 units, plus PE and NSTP requirements. So given this, as a faculty, we could do something to address this. We could be conscious and aware that some of our students may appear to be okay, but they are not really so in real life. Wala kasi tayo sa loob ng bahay nila at hindi natin alam ang struggle ng bawat estudyante sa loob at labas ng kanilang pamilya. Kung mayroon ba silang mga problemang pinagdadaanan, yung mga may dysfunctional family, etc. So what we can do is to, of course, extend our empathy and compassion, try to feel what they are feeling, imagine ourselves in their situation. Kung ikaw ba ang parating sinisigawan sa klase at pinapahiya, di ba? Lalo na kung 6 units yung klase na yun na integrated, na everyday kayong nag-uusap and you are under medication, baka mas lalong lumala yung kondisyon mo. Sensitivity to their feelings. We can be conscious of how we express our messages to avoid hurting their feelings, like yung mga email natin, messenger, or FB messages. And a lot of patience and understanding. Ito, kailangan talagang mas mahaba dahil ngayon nila tayo mas kailangan upang iparamdam na may karamay sila sa kanilang pinagdaraanan at sitwasyon. So we could at least be resilient and flexible. We can adjust our requirements but still be firm on what should be the bare minimum for the course. Kung baga, kailangan nating timbangin eh. This time around, di ka pwedeng masyadong maging stricta na ikaw ang hari ng mundo dahil teacher ka. Kailangan talaga tayong mag-adjust ayon sa kanilang kakayahan, pati dun sa online class, kasi yung iba mobile cellphones lang ang gamit, mobile data lang na hindi kayang mag-zoom, etc. No? So tayo ang iintindi sa kanila, kumbaga tayo ang taya sa pagkakataong ito, kahit pa sabihin nating tayo mismo ay may mga pinagdadaanan din sa personal nating mga buhay. Ang dasal ko lamang po sana, huwag naman po sanang dumating sa atin ang pagkakataon na maaaring isa pa tayo sa mga magiging dahilan ng mga hindi inaasahang pangyayari sa buhay ng ating mga estudyante. So this is just a food for thought for your consideration. Maraming salamat po. Now I give the floor to Professor Kaslib because he will be sharing his course pack for Ethics 1. He is an assistant professor in philosophy and he is our Canvas champion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sioco. Thank you very much, ma'am, and good morning to everybody. I was requested by this committee to present a sample course pack for Ethics 1. UP Manila has taught Ethics 1 for its pilot teaching last mid-year, and since mid-year of last academic year, June, July, we have already migrated into Canvas. UP Manila was able to acquire license for the use of Canvas as an LMS, as a learning management system. So I'd just like to show you how we did it in UP Manila. So this is an example. What I'm sharing now is an example of my module in Ethics 1 last semester. So I have divided the entire course into several modules. So module 0 is the introduction and preliminaries, as you can see. Module 1 is the introduction of key concepts and issues in ethics. Module 2, I focused on moral agent. Module 3 is reason and values, where I also infuse and assimilate the chapter on Filipino philosophy. Module 4 is where I discuss the three basic normative theories in ethics, the teleological and the ontological and the utilitarianism. And module 5, I talk about how moral deliberation may be done. So here I present a framework for moral deliberation. Dr. Ocampo mentioned earlier that Ethics 1 as one of the most relevant GE courses that we are offering in the university impacts on the good of the others. So I think that especially during this time of COVID pandemic, we have the responsibility to make the teaching of the course alive. And this means that on top of the theories of ethics, we have to show the students how we can directly use the theories they learn in our course. And so I end the course with some topics in applied ethics. So I'll just be, we're very short on time. So I'll just try to show you, because I was asked to show how I do it in this asynchronous class using Canvas. I'll just show you one module, go through very quickly, module 1. So I always begin with the learning outcomes in every module. So I indicate the module outcomes, what the students are expected to attain, so that even if they do this asynchronously, then they know what they're expected to attain at the end of the module. And then after the outcomes, so I usually have just like this, no, a comics that I've prepared myself. No, there are tons of websites online that you can use, no, if you want to employ comic strips in your course packs. No, so here you can see an integration that I have made with another website, Flipgrid. Here I post a question, what is ethics? And Flipgrid integrated into Canvas allows the students to actually record responses, video responses. So all of their responses are here. The student, I'm sorry, I don't have a means of deleting the names of the students so that they won't be recognizable to you. No, but this is an example. No, so just an example, just to show you the wonders of these. No, so you just click on the response and then play, and the entire class, not just the teacher, will be able to view the responses. No, so this is like the motivation part of the module. And then I also have, so in this case, what is ethics again? I have an integrated website again. This one is Edpuzzle, and here I have a video that attempts at jump starting the topic. So here the students will be able to view a video that is available online through Edpuzzle, and I was able to insert a question. So at a certain point, as they watch the video, these open-ended questions will appear in their screens, and they will be able to input their answers. And this will be accessible to you, so you can comment on your students' work. And then, okay, let me just go back. And then, oops, I'm sorry. And then, after that, so we go to the content of the module. So here, I have an embedded lecture for the first module. So this is me. I have recorded myself with my entire lecture for module 0 and embedded the entire lecture. It's a very short lecture here on my module. So the students will be able to play my lecture, so they don't have to attend synchronous classes. So you can also do this. No, you can make your recording unavailable to the general public, as what I've done. No, I don't want to be a YouTuber. No, I'm only recording myself for purposes of teaching. And then after the recording, So here you see another activity, which is also an integration with Edpuzzle, just like what I've shown earlier. It's a video. It's a continuation of the video where a student, where a question will pop up in the middle of the video, and then uh, so this is the continuation of my lecture earlier, and for evaluation. So this is still a continuation of my module, but here you see a table where I solicit responses from the students. This is actually a group work where students were grouped together to discuss among themselves certain questions on the module. No, and Canvas allows for grouping students conveniently, no, so they will be able to work on a particular task together with their group mates. No, the submission comes next, no, in the next part of the module. So this is the submission part, no, where students can actually upload their output, and we in UP Manila, using Canvas, are able to conveniently grade using a speed grader. No, this allows us to provide timely feedback to the students. And then I always end my modules with an exit ticket where the students are asked, what they learned, from the modules. So in effect, you are making the students summarize their learnings for the module, and the students post their responses. So I think this kind of asynchronous course pack allows students to participate and learn from the course without necessarily having to attend all the synchronous sessions that we have. So the references in my classes, just the last point that I was asked to mention, the references in my classes for the past semesters, this online teaching, I have focused on secondary texts rather than the primary texts. No, I have, just like what Dr. Sioco mentioned, part of our responsibility is to be a little more considerate to students. So I have, in my judgment, realized that it will not be optimal to require a lot of primary text at this particular time, no, because there will not be enough time to also process and discuss. So for my course, these are the references. Let me just go through the. So all of these things are indicated in module 0. So for the references, if you're interested, so here are my references, in this module. So all of them are available online. So the required readings are here, and the suggested readings are here. Now, while they're all available online, I also made sure to upload the materials in the modules where they are relevant. So that's it, and thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Paula and Professor Kaslib, for sharing us your insights about the course pack, the Ethics 1 course pack, and some classroom management tips from Professor Paula. Let's proceed to Professor Olive for her reflections or insights about classroom management also. Ma'am Olive?
Thank you, Sir Vlad. Let me share my screen. There. Yeah, let me just follow through what Professor Liza, Professor Kaslib, and Dr. Sioco shared. The talking points assigned to us in UP Baguio would be to share assessment tools and classroom management strategies that worked for us. So that's what I will do with you. I will walk you through a list of various strategies that worked for us. I'll begin with um, assessment tools, particularly formative forms of assessment. So some of the things that worked for us are first, live chat recitation. Live chat recitations require very minimal data from students, which is of course a concern that we all share. Um, One suggestion for live chat recitations is to give a question and assign a specific time period for students to answer, like 5 minutes for easy questions and 10 minutes for more difficult ones. This also reduces anxiety among students if affects their performance. There's also no need to worry about audio problems since you won't be using audio anyway. The second assessment tool for formative assessment is open sharing sessions. It's an individual effort to participate in the class discussion. How does it work? Students will be chosen randomly to share their insight on the specific topic discussed in the lectures. After that, another student will be randomly called to react to the insight of their predecessor. The third suggestion would be silent meetings. This is also something I learned from other technique. It encourages focused work on a specific task with 25-minute bursts. So it's a task that's used especially to combat forms of distraction, especially for students who are overwhelmed with so many deadlines and requirements. They find it very difficult to focus on ethics one requirements. So to focus on just one or two tasks yet because they will work on it in progress. So this encourages engagement with learning materials beforehand and coming up with drafts in progress for essays. What should we expect as teachers? That there will be students who would still be absent during these scheduled meetings. So a suggested compromise is to group absentees and assign a special silent meeting for them. This will not require too much energy from the teacher, save from writing clear instructions for the specific task they will do for the 25-minute bursts and telling them the start and closing time. And of course, we have to remember to tell them to submit within 5 to 10 minutes after the session because it's encouraging a focused work on very specific tasks for ethics one. Other formative assessment tools, podcast questions. This ensures that students' exposure is not only in text, but multimedia as well. It's also an opportunity to learn from leading philosophers. So these are samples in our time: Ansi-Cast, Philosophy Bites, and IAI TV. Next would be the use of memes. This allows students to express and state their ideas on a specific topic in an artistic way. Of course, there are many examples of memes, philosophy memes on the internet. And I know that many of our students are aware of them. They even share sometimes just to lighten synchronous sessions. The next one would be an activity to test comprehension, just like quizzes. This gives students the opportunity to define essential concepts in their own words. Next would be summary assessment.
Olive, are you still there?
Baka nagkaroon siya ng
Seems
connection.
like, yeah, Ma'am Olive was disconnected from the Zoom because of... Ma'am Olive?
Sorry, mag-off video na lang ako, Sir Vlad.
Yes.
Sir Vlad.
Yes, Ma'am Olive, we can hear you now.
Mag-off video na lang ako. I apologize for that. Let me now proceed to summative forms of assessment. Can you see my slides, Sir Vlad?
Yes, Ma'am Olive, we can see it.
Ayaw pati.
Ma'am Olive, are you still connected?
Can you also see my slides?
Yeah, we can already see it. Please continue.
These are some summative forms of assessment. Short, yeah. For summative forms of assessment, short essays, position papers, or thought pieces, this encourages articulation of ideas in succinct ways. It also reduces the burden to produce lengthy essays, and of course, an opportunity to open knowledge of theories and concepts. Also, especially of materials on which to make a position or response that would include.
Seems like Ma'am Olive was disconnected again. Let's wait if she can enter the Zoom immediately. If not, we can proceed po with Ma'am Marga's sharing. And so I think while waiting for Ma'am Olive to reconnect, we can now proceed with Ma'am Marga's sharing. And perhaps Ma'am Olive can continue later on during the Q&A session. Ma'am Marga, and may I also request Ma'am Karen to share the screen of Ma'am Marga?
Thank you, Sir Vlad. Good morning to everyone, and I hope you're all safe and well. So I'll be discussing challenges and opportunities in teaching ethics 1. So I solicited for my colleagues in UPLD, UPLD Philosophy Division, about their own experiences and insights. So what I'll be discussing is based off on my own experiences and also our collective experience in the division. So next slide po. Just a brief background po on our efforts. So 2019, a year after the initial implementation of Ethics 1, so we made minor revision of the Ethics 1 course outline. We had these significant changes. So we kind of modified the module partitioning, and we included a module on introduction to philosophy, and we trimmed down some of the sources that were suggested by the system. So these are actually based on the feedback of students and the faculty teaching Ethics 1. So we tried to address these problems, no? Specifically the second, which is an inclusion of the module on introduction to philo, because a lot of students, no, they don't have a solid background, or they lack the philosophy basics. That's why nahirapan sila actually to study, no, Ethics 1 with all the resources, suggested readings, etc. And then come the new normal, 2020 and 2021, we had a course redesigned for Ethics 1's remote delivery, or for the remote learning setup. So we crafted our own UPLB Ethics 1 modules. So we assigned module writers, no, among the members of our division. And then we created course packs, no, with, of course, with the recommendation of the content of the course packs. So we, due to our academic freedom, so individually po, we also we had slight modifications, but we agreed that we had to stick, no, with the essentials, no, and we identified that as dapat makover yung major theories. Next slide po. All right. So challenges. So we recognize that remote learning setup, no, and this kind of or emergency remote teaching is actually both a challenge and an opportunity in itself. And so, due to time constraints po, no, I categorized these identified challenges into general themes, and we know that all these challenges are actually related, no, with each other. They are interconnected in a sense that one challenge is actually just an offshoot of another. It is a result of another challenge, etc. Next slide po. So I categorized them into 3. So first is the internet access and technical issues. So because of this difficulty, no, we had the default of asynchronous mode of delivery. So because we had this default, we also assigned some occasional synchronous sessions, at least in our classes. And so because of these occasional synchronous sessions, ang nangyayari po is, lalo in my case, I just record lectures so that our synchronous sessions will just solely be dedicated to philosophical discussions. So it's also a struggle to record audio or video lectures, since we're not vloggers, and this is very new to us. No, and it's also a struggle because of the technical issues and limited internet connectivity. May mga technical problems like nadi-disconnect yung students and tayo. And it's also one of the things din siguro na that also adds doon sa difficulties na to ay of course we're not used to facing the screens and wala tayong mga faces na nakikita because we also don't require these students to open their cameras. So next po is class interaction and student management. So another major problem that we encounter is how do we ensure that learning takes place? So how do we facilitate our classroom, no, with the kind of setup that we have? How do we simulate our classrooms? Now specifically that ethics is of course philosophy, no, and the problem of yung pagiging monologue nung ating mga discussions ngayon from yung expected, which is of course dialogue when we discuss philosophical or ethical discussions. So it's hard to check sometimes, no, if they're really interested. So it's hard to sustain these discussions. So we cannot, of course, force them to engage in our discussions. And there's also this teaching in the Zoom void because of course, no, yung mga problems in internet access and technical issues. I also included here, no, how it's difficult for us to also establish genuine, real connection with our students. So that poses a problem too. And I included here the course requirements. So because it's discouraged and because of the inequality din ng internet access ng lahat, madalas po puro essays din yung nabibigay na requirements. So ang nangyayari doon is ang hirap magbigay ng feedback, no, ng timely feedback because of the screen fatigue din dahil sa mahahabang mga essays and maraming essays na chine-check natin using just our laptops. So of course, no, nakakadagdag dito yung student-teacher ratio. For the first semester, I think I also handled almost 40 students because of pre-log, etc. So ang hirap ng i-manage yung ganun kalaki na class, no, sa ganitong setup. So lastly, very general. So we encountered outside our work, no, we also have this pandemic and existential challenges. So work from home setup, no, we recognize that distractions are really a reality of remote work. No, even mga tahol po ng aso o tilaok ng manok nagiging problem din sometimes. And so it's hard, no, we also have these other stresses, no, outside of our work. So of course the COVID-19 induced anxiety, how we cope and manage with our mental and emotional well-being, due to of course, no, a result din that because we are basically navigating uncharted territory. So we are in unfamiliar waters, no, which of course contributes to existential challenges in teaching. Like, is this still teaching? Am I teaching enough? Are my efforts enough? So for example, nagkakaroon tayo sometimes ng guilt. Like for example, in my case, so na-COVID yung family ko and then I had to cancel all our synchronous sessions and I hadn't met my students in like 3 weeks. No, sometimes I also have this guilt, like talaga ba nagtuturo pa din ba ako? And I sometimes question, no, my capability as a teacher. So I think this also begs the active reimagining of this role. No, lastly po, the opportunities. Next slide po. So for the opportunities, mabilis na lang po to, and I hope that we can also talk about more of these later on in the Q&A and open forum. So for the first one is, okay, because this is, we also want to see this as transformation, tulad po ng nabanggit ni Dr. Ocampo. So next slide po, we want to see this learning setup, no, as something that could provide us opportunities for teaching innovation. Okay, so we can explore a lot of possibilities here. No, we can discover and enhance new skills. No, we're forced no, to record our lectures, matututunan natin yung mga skills like this. We become more creative with a wide array of media, of resources, no, at our disposal. And of course, we also explore apps, websites, no, na nakakatulong to be as efficient and as effective in this learning setup. It's also an opportunity, no, because our students are technological natives, so they're very tech savvy. And we can utilize internet sources. So yung educational content in social media, mas na-maximize natin. And yun nga, nagkakaroon tayo ng mas malawak na sources for our classes. And lastly is, of course, if done right, and if approached, no, with or if this is with the kind approach, no, with the kind approach, and if done right, I think this could be a potential source of empowerment for independent learning. So our students are now taking meaningful ownership, no, in their learning. So it provides opportunities for an independent and student-paced learning. So I hope that we can discuss and we can share our experiences, no, our own challenges and the opportunities that we encountered in teaching ethics 1 later. Thank you po.
Thank you, Ma'am Marga, for sharing the insights of your discipline of philosophy in UPLB about the challenges that you are confronting in teaching ethics 1 during this pandemic. So that officially ends po the panel sharing of our session, and we are officially starting the Q&A session of this session, right? So if you have any questions po, you can direct them to the link provided by the OVPAA in our chat box, and you can also unmute yourself. Before we entertain questions, let me just check if Ma'am Olive is already in our Zoom meeting again, right? Because perhaps we could...
Sir Vlad, I'm back.
Yeah. Perhaps we could spend the first parts of the Q&A session with the continuation of your sharing, Ma'am Olive, while our participants are organizing their thoughts and raising their question in the link in the chat box.
Thank you, Sir Vlad. I ask our assistant moderator to share the screen for me. I'll also keep my video off. Ma'am Karen? I'll start from the summative assessment part where I ended a while ago. I already mentioned 2 forms of summative assessment. Those are short papers, and the second one would be forum. The VLE, for instance, has a forum feature where we can post topics and students can react to that, or the students can open topics and their peers can react to that. Maybe we can proceed to the third form of summative assessment in the list, Ma'am Karen. Thank you. After the forum po. Right. This is another interesting contribution from my colleagues. It's a video essay. This is for students who are more comfortable with their oral communication skills. It's also an avenue for them to explore their creative and artistic style, and it stands as an alternative to written essay. I think Sir Kaslib was able to share a sample of this a while ago in his canvas. Next. Another form of summative assessment would be philosophers in dialogue. The output aims to assess students' understanding of the 3 main normative theories. So philosophers would be in dialogue. It's a creative expression of the philosopher's ideas in discourse with each other in answering the question, what's the right thing to do? Next. These are different forms of classroom management that worked for us in UP Baguio. The first one would be class participation proposal. This is one thing I learned from a colleague. It's asking students to together collectively agree on a set of criteria which they think they can satisfy and will be the basis of their grade. It's also an exercise of their own agency in the sense that it makes students collaborators in drafting rules that will apply to them. A suggestion would be you publish this criteria in a specific section of your online classrooms for them to refer to all the time throughout the semester. So the emphasis would be for students to be proactive in their learning. It's for students to be very active and involved in asking their questions, seeking clarifications, concepts that they don't understand, etc., and how they want that to translate into criteria on which they will be graded or assessed later on. Next. Another classroom, very important classroom management strategy would be timely assessment of quick responses. This reduces anxiety felt by students on whether they are doing well, whether they're following the materials and activity guides correctly. So a quick reply to emails and text messages really helps alleviate anxiety-induced concerns from our students. The next would be weekly or bi-monthly consultation where the class is divided into 5 study groups or some number of groups, and they will submit 2 questions, and that will be the talking points of each consultation. And finally, classroom strategy that worked would be deadline extensions. That's basically just extending leniency and extra understanding to students with varying and complex concerns that sometimes we just don't understand. And I think Dr. Sioco was able to give us points on that a while ago, and Ma'am Marga as well. That's all, professors. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Ma'am Olive, for sharing with us some tips and insights about classroom management. Right. So, to proceed to our Q&A session, let us therefore entertain some questions that were already submitted in our link and in the registration form. Right. So, any of our panel members can answer these questions. So, let me take a question about teaching strategies. Right. So here's a question. How do you effectively use the virtual synchronous sessions to maximize learning? Right. So how do you effectively use the virtual synchronous sessions to maximize learning? Anyone from our panel members who would want to answer that?
Dun sa sa synchronous sessions naman kasi, we have to understand na mahirap kasing magbigay ng recitation points kung hindi naman lahat merong connection o reliable yung connection. So at the beginning of the semester, ano talaga sa akin, in-specify ko na wala siyang recitation points. Pero meron tayong sharing para hindi sila maasiwarin na magsalita and etc. Just for the sake, sharing for the sake of sharing. Para lang sila ma-encourage. Pero yung mga wala, hindi rin sila mabibigyan ng negative na minus point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Paula, for that insight. How about our other panel members? Do you have any suggestions? How do we maximize the synchronous sessions for learning, especially if we are delivering the course asynchronously or primarily asynchronously? Right? Kasi di ba we could do that. We could combine asynchronous learning with synchronous learning. Right? And that therefore, since we are already delivering the course asynchronously, how do we therefore view view the function of the synchronous sessions, either in Zoom or other virtual platforms?
Sir Vlad?
Yes, Ma'am Mark.
In my experience po and also my other colleagues, so ang ginawa po namin ay we already recorded the lectures. So yung synchronous sessions, which for me, ang ginagawa ko po is twice a month. So parang every 2 weeks siya. Ang lectures po I recorded. So ako po ay audio lecture ang ginagamit ko, and then I also send them PowerPoint slides. So I chose audio lecture kasi mas konti po yung size niya, no? Mas maliit po yung size, so mas madaling ma-download kahit data lang yung gamit. So also request din yun and isa yun sa mga feedback last time kasi I also upload lectures last time na video lecture. So mas accessible po yung audio lecture and I think it works naman kahit 15 to 20 minutes. And then after that, pag po come our synchronous session, I'll be asking them to note their questions na kasi pagka synchronous sessions, we'll be having discussions na. So ang ginagawa ko po is nagsistart ako with an activity. So philosophical activity kaagad siya or a philosophical thought experiment. And then, yun, magkakaroon, parang yun po yung start ng discussion namin. And then sa last would be just to reiterate. So kasi parang sa discussion, nadadaanan na namin lahat ng mga konsepto na mga na-discuss sa lectures. And then at the same time, they also have time in the end to ask and clarify questions no, pertaining dun sa mga lecture na na-cover. So dahil every 2 weeks po siya, parang 2 weeks worth of lecture po yung and then discussion po yung ginagawa namin. So, yun po.
Thank you, Ma'am Marga. How about Ma'am Liza? Do you do synchronous meeting?
Yes, I do synchronous 4 times a month. And then in the introduction of the course in Ethics 1, since my class is small, I don't have 40. I don't have 40 students. It's just really 16 students. I see that when I give the reading assignments, which are 2 or 3 pages of a primary text or a secondary text in ethics, they prepare for that, and somehow during the synchronous classes, we really have an exchange. Because somehow it is to impress upon the students that precisely it is in their hands that if they do not read those short but fundamental texts, we will not be able to have an exchange even from my own point of view and even in their own learning, because precisely it's ethics. It's to lead them to what? Moral reasoning, the reasoning process. So what I see is to really give them curated reading texts, so that they can have them as premises in their reasoning process, so that by the time that we have the synchronous class, 30 minutes would be an exchange, and then it has been like that, and also after the synchronous exchange via Zoom, I give them writing assignments, but it's like write a letter to Socrates about this particular aspect. Then they give it after a week. And the past year, I found it very, very helpful, and it resonates with the students. The conceptual level and the existential level comes out in the letters. They're just short letters. For example, the one letter to Socrates, a letter to Aristotle, letters to Screwtape, because I asked them to read the Screwtape letters. So with that, even the epistolary aspect comes out, not just the digital, because besides we're always in the digital. So and then I asked them, upload the letters handwritten, and because you see the final output is it's an ethics scrapbook of the letters, of maybe a reaction to a poem, to a song, to a movie. So it's that. So it's not really so much that you are grading them, because you have to give them time for the things to sit. So that's how I do it, and I think that is the advantage of small classes, because really I feel for the ones with 40 students, it's really difficult to handle such numbers, in an ethics class.
Thank you, Ma'am Liza. Since we are already talking about synchronous meetings, there's a question here that is related to how do we handle synchronous meetings. And the question is, how do we encourage our students to participate in the synchronous discussion, synchronous meeting, given that we cannot force them to turn on their cameras, or we cannot force them to unmute themselves or even chat in the chat box. So what are the strategies that you implement in your online synchronous meetings to encourage our students po.
I just want to follow through with that, no?
Yes,
I give them bonus points. May bonus points yung ganun yan eh. I mean, you have to give them a benefit. I mean, if you don't give them benefit, they will not come out.
Yeah.
No? Kasi most often than not, all of them come out eh. Naka-video pa sila. No? Pero talagang yung bibigyan mo na plus 10 points, no? 15 points, no? Things like that, no? But then to balance it, no? Balance it.
Yeah.
Ako naman, wala akong bonus points. Pero mukha namang mababait sila kasi pag sinabi ko na, lalo na sa umpisa pa lang, sabi ko, wala kasi attendance points din. May memo kasi sa amin na walang attendance na at walang recitation points. So umpisa pa lang, sabi ko, gusto ko kasi kayong makilala. Pwede bang paki-on ninyo yung video ninyo? Gusto ko kayong makita yung mga mukha nyo, yung mga kagwapuhan at kagandahan dyan. So tapos noon, we begin with sharing, etc. Pag nandiyan na sila, lalo na kung merong activity na sharing, umpisa pa lang ina-announce ko na. But unfortunately, kasi nga may mga mobile lang kasi ang gamit nila, may mga hindi talaga makakapagbukas ng video. So okay lang din naman, wala namang puwersahan, kumbaga. Pero most of them are okay with it. Wala namang problema sa akin.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am Olive, do you have any?
Sir Vlad,
Yes.
yeah, I will mag-off video na lang din ulit ako. I think the challenge is to really design our synchronous sessions in such a way that they emphasize the value of being proactive. So, for instance, what we learned in UP Baguio is that we design the synchronous sessions in the VLE in such a way that first the professor will recap or synthesize the lesson, which is already done in the video recordings anyway, but for the students to ask their questions and seek clarifications. And prior to the synchronous meeting, the professor collects their questions through a Google form. If no questions are raised, the synchronous session will not proceed. And this is to encourage for them to be responsible for their own learning. In the case of the VLE, merong each section or part ng module may muddiest point, quote-unquote, ng forum. And sa forum na yan, the students can post parts of the reading or recorded discussions that are not clear or they don't understand, and the professor can respond to them either in the synchronous sessions or in the forum itself so that they can also visit synchronous sessions.
Thank you, Ma'am Olive. Do you have any additions, Ma'am Marga, regarding synchronous meetings?
Wala rin akong bonus points or anything, pero siguro nandun na ako sa, or what works for me is that acknowledge ko na yung fact na kung magkakaroon man kami ng discussion, talagang konti lang yung estudyante na mag-engage. So I utilize yung gano'n na na even if konti lang sila or pare-pareho lang yung mga students na nag-raise ng hands or nagsasalita, mas kumbaga para mas pinapalawak pa namin yung discussion para mas makarating sa iba. Like for example, ang ginagawa ko is may questions ako tapos or merong isang question dito tapos wala pang willing magsalita, ganyan. So what I do is that ako mismo yung nagpo-post ng parang mas magtatanong ako ng magtatanong hangga't kumbaga ma-elicit sa kanila na, for example, they really have to share their own insight or their own experience. So parang I try to compose my questions in a way na that would elicit in them na gusto nilang mabigay yung kanilang insights or answers. So pero so far po in my classes naman, very active naman sila pagdating sa mga philosophical discussions. So wala po akong naging ganung problem pagdating sa discussions.
Vlad, what just one thing that I was just thinking about, no? Because what I noticed after 1 year of teaching ethics 1, no? It's if you highlight the relational aspect, no? Yung dialogical aspect, the students respond. No? Magre-react din talaga sila that precisely it is in relation, no? In relation with the professor and with your other classmates and with the philosophers who have gone before us, no? That you will have a living relationship, no? Philosophically and even ethically. No? So it will take mga 1 month yan eh. No? Pero after a month, no? When they get it, no? They respond, no, which is, and I realize we are really with the best in the country, no, that precisely the UP student, no, once they get the point of the subject, they deliver. No? So far, ganun yung ganun yung experience ko so far, no? Pag highlight mo yung relational aspect, that you need others, no, to grow, no? To grow, I mean, especially ethically, no?
Thank you, ma'am. I agree with what Ma'am Liza pointed out about one way or one strategy kasi talaga to encourage our students participate in the classroom, in the online classroom, is to build relationships with them or to build rapport with them, right? And of course, that's a difficult thing to build or establish. That's why there are strategies that we could employ so that we could build a rapport with our students, so that our students can become comfortable expressing themselves in the online classroom. Kasi yun yung mahirap yung naka-off video yung mga tao and wala talagang connection between you as the professor and the students. So importante yung strategies like kumustahan, yung before you begin the lesson, before you begin the synchronous meeting, may 5 minutes to 10 minutes kayo na kumustahan. That's one way to build rapport or relationship with your students. One way also is to kumustahan yung mga icebreakers, right? Things like this are important strategies so that we can build our relationships. And that therefore, if the relationship has already been built, right, we could perhaps expect na mas maging comfortable na sila na mag-share, mag-participate sa mga synchronous lessons, right? So let's proceed to another question. This related naman po to assessment tools, right? And the question is about what are the alternative assessment tools that you use? Alternatives to quizzes, to exams that were effective in the context of the face-to-face classes, right? Kasi yung mga quizzes natin, exams natin in the past, effective sila sa face-to-face kasi pwede nilang, you can tell your students to keep their notes, to keep their readings. Pero paano kayo nagpapa-exam ngayon sa synchronous mode na available na sa kanila yung mga readings nila, pwede nilang i-search online yung mga answers sa questions. So what are your strategies in the assessment tools po?
Talagang okay lang na open notes, for example.
Pero what type of questions therefore do you ask, ma'am?
It's like an essay itemized, for example. What did Thrasymachus say in the first book of the Republic? Because the action of actually looking for the answer, may learning na yun eh.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the class or after, they can submit it. Kasi that's already learning. I mean, yun ang mind frame ko eh. But it should be na essay na very itemized then, that they have to go to the text and then what they have to call.
How about the others po?
Sir Vlad?
Yes, Ma'am Olive.
Yeah, I think all of us teachers share that concern that students can now easily Google questions, for instance, and get answers from the internet. So I guess one strategy is to emphasize use or application of moral concepts and frameworks they learn from the class. So more than questions that are what, we emphasize more on why, how, or so what are the implications, what are at stake, can you draw the conclusions or can you draw the implications of this and that ethical situation. And in that sense, we encourage them to think, to apply, to recall ethical concepts, to apply these concepts or to explain these further in their own words. So one suggestion, for instance, from my colleague in UP Baguio is in their utilitarianism exam, you ask students to evaluate the morality of YOLO mentality from the point of view of Mill's utilitarianism. So for instance, especially in relation to his qualitative hedonism. Whereas another example from a colleague is on their Kant exam, ask students to write a reply letter to Maria, a hypothetical person asking advice about the particular situations she is in. So that will make them recall Kantian or deontological concepts and really apply them in these situations so that they the concern of the teacher about okay baka ginugal lang nila yung answer or baka hindi talaga sila nag-isip pinace ng nila dito. Of course, meron din tayong ibang mechanisms for that like Turnitin, plagiarism checks, similarity reports, etc. But on top of that, what we want to do is encourage students to think about these further, to think through these concepts further, and to articulate them in ways, in their own words. Yun lang, Sir Vlad.
Thank you, Ma'am Olive.
Sir Vlad, pwede ba akong sumingit sandali?
Yes po, Prof.
Oo.
Kaslib.
Yes, oo. Gusto ko lang mag-share, no? Sa classes ko kasi, recognizing the limits. Ang gaganda ng mga suggestions ng mga colleagues natin. And ako, talagang gusto ko rin yung mga yan. Kaya lang, what I realized, since I've been, yun nga, parang this is the third semester that I'm doing the online thing since mid-year and first semester, and we try to adjust, no. Nung mid-year, ganun din ang ginagawa ko, no, maraming activities, but then eventually, so now we're second sem na, talagang highly reduced na, no, in recognition of the global pandemic. I mean, it's a real thing, no. I mean, ideally, if we're doing this face to face, it's nice to do all of these things, but now let me just share that I'm now only requiring 3 requirements in all my classes, no, in ethics 1, even in the other philo classes. Number 1 is participation. I really, lahating ko na lang, no, ito rin yung gusto kong sabihin kanina. So for participation, we really need to engage the students synchronously or asynchronously. But what I do is, I give an option. They can either do it asynchronously, so I give them prompts. No, this is what we do in philosophy, di ba? I give them prompts for every synchronous session that they don't want to attend. No, so for example, my topic now is on the moral development process. No, so they can't attend synchronous sessions. So I explain to them, I don't have a way to measure your learning. So I really need you to either write a short reflection piece, 500 to 1,000 words only, or you attend the class and you engage. So that's how I give it a democratic spin. So sabi nga ni Dr. Sioco, boss ko yan, no? So sa amin, we cannot, I guess sa atin ding lahat ng units, we cannot require them to recite. But aside from explaining to them that we want to see your faces, we want to see you engaged, no? They have group sharing via we have that facility here in Zoom. We can lump them together in discussion groups, right, in breakout rooms. But aside from that, if the internet connectivity does not allow them, especially many of them are in their provinces right now, so they have an option to also write reflection prompts. But in that manner, in effect, in that manner, I recognize that participation need not be always written nor oral. So I give them an option. That's number 1. Number 2, in my classes, so sabi ko 3. Number 2, quizzes. No, I'm sorry, but I can't let go of quizzes because I feel that that is the only way by which I can measure whether the students are able to conceptually grasp, no, the learning handles, no. But sabi niyo, paano yon? Sabi ni, ito naman, mentor ko, advisor ko rin ng undergrad at MA, si Dr. Ocampo. Sabi ni, ma'am, siguro pwede na yung open notes. That's true kasi wala naman na tayong magagawa talaga, no. Paano natin? But UP Manila has now, I'd just like to share, no, proud na proud. UP Manila is now on trial with a proctoring app, no, that we can integrate in Canvas, no, para kung meron kami kasi it's a health sciences center, so yung mga health courses gusto talaga ng colleges nila may mga objective exams na hindi mag-cheat, no, so pwedeng i-monitor yung objective assessments, no, so pwede rin yun. But in my case, I heard the question kanina, ano pong klaseng questions? Alam nga namang magtanong tayo ng true or false or multiple choice, and they can easily Google the answer. So what I do is, even if I give objective quizzes, true or false or multiple choice, I don't ask questions that are lower order thinking skills, kind of, ano bang tawag doon? Basta those that hit lower order thinking skills. No, I don't ask them, anong buong pangalan ni Kant, for example, or what are the 3 categorical imperatives. Rather, I ask them situational questions that they cannot, no, Google anywhere else in the world, no. So for example, Dr. Nak, I was chatting with Dr. Nak from UP Diliman a while ago on the practicality of the course, and one way for quizzes is ask questions like, community pantry, no, talk about the community pantry issue, and then ask them, no, which of the following categorical imperatives was violated by this and that personality. Di po ba, Doc?
Yes,
So
yes.
that's one way, no, for quizzes.
Pwedeng
But
exam yan eh.
yes, Doc, opo. But my third assessment, so quizzes and then participation, my third is the final case study. That's what I'm saying kanina, no. I really lead the students sa buong course na matutong mag-deliberate ethically, no. So from mid semester, I asked them to propose a relevant Filipino case study. And then I go through the Filipino case study with a group, usually groups of 3, kasi 3,000 words lang gusto ko dahil alam naman nating napakahirap. Ewan ko sa ibang, syempre alam ko naman ang load sa Diliman and sa Manila, hindi ko sure sa ibang CU, pero sa Manila kasi hirap na hirap yung mga health courses, no? So sa dami ng kanilang subjects. So we really have to adjust. So alam namang pagsulatin ko bawat isang estudyante ng 3,000 word essay bawat isa. Plus, reality-wise, hindi rin naman natin kayang basahin lahat. So let's just be true to ourselves. Let's be kind to students. Let's be kind to ourselves. So I asked groups of 3 students to write a case study. So for example, just one example. One group of students last semester wrote on the vaccine hesitancy. No, why Filipinos? I mean, the ethics. Is there no moral responsibility in getting yourself inoculated? No. How do you appease the trepidations of people in getting vaccinated due to the vaccine scare? Tapos you lead them until the end, no? And you know what, students are able to pull through, no? Talagang magaganda rin yung kanilang mga output, no? Ganun, no? Simpleng-simple lang, no? So you have an assessment for application, that's the final case study, relevant, no? And you have an objective for the conceptual, that's my quizzes, and then the participation to motivate them to be participative, no? And active in class, no? Yun lang. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Kaslib, for sharing your insights about the assessment tools. Right? So time check lang po, it's already 11:51 in my watch, and I'm afraid that we have to end the Q&A session at this point. But let me just emphasize that, of course, this session, this Ethics 1 session, is just the starting point or the beginning for a hopefully more fruitful conversation that would continue between and among us as Ethics 1 teachers. Right? So thank you po for raising your questions, and for our panelists for answering those questions. Before I give the floor to the virtual floor to the GE team, let me just thank po our panel members for sharing their insights about the talking points. So Ma'am Olive, Ma'am Marga, Ma'am Paula, and Ma'am Liza, and of course, Sir Kaslib. I would also like to thank our assistant moderator, Ma'am Karen De Castro, for assisting us. And of course, the GE team, the technical team, in assisting us in making this Zoom session possible. Right, so thank you po. And of course, to our participants in this Zoom meeting, thank you for attending po.
Before everyone disappears, we will on behalf of the technical working group, I would like to hand over virtually the certificate of appreciation to our moderator, Professor Valdemire Kevin Bumatay of UP Baguio. Thank you for the able moderation. Is Ma'am Karen De Castro our assistant moderator or deputy?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Assistant.
Right. Okay, because I didn't see her. Yeah, she was working at the backstage, as it were. Thank you very much. And of course, Professor Bernard Kaslib of UP Manila, Professor Olivia Mendoza of UP Baguio, Professor Maria Liza Ruth A. Ocampo of UP Diliman, Professor Paula Sioco of UP Manila, and Professor Krissah Marga B. Taganas of UP Los Baños. Thank you very much for that very lively, thought-provoking conversation. Of course, it's these conversations are really, this particular conversation is really just the start of more conversations that we should be having, especially as I think you pointed out in the discussion that a course like this, dialogue, discourse, discussion is very important, is essential. So really, we must try and pick up where we left off today. I think in the memo, you may recall the note about the possibility of again organizing course-specific workshops, for example, which are or you know, just more exchanges amongst ourselves per course. This is the second conversation today, but the fifth one in this particular series we started yesterday. Some of you may have joined us already yesterday. We had 3 in the Arts and Humanities cluster, Arts 1, Phil Arts 1, and Wika Isa. And then this morning we had Com 10, and then this Ethics 1 discussion. This afternoon we have one more for the week, and that's on STS 1. So if you can join us at 1:30, you are all welcome. And then the next set of conversations will be next week. So two days a week lang po tayo. We have other things to do, and you know, very very hectic lives, it seems. Not less hectic than if we were running around literally on campus. So before we all disappear and have lunch, can we have a photo session with everyone? If you can. You were all talking about persuading people to show their faces during your synchronous session. So maybe we can do that now with ourselves. And Steph, our GE Secretariat, will take our photo and let us know if we will stop smiling now and go back to scowling. Okay.
1, 2, 3. 3 more. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Last. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Dami din pala natin. Thank you so much.
Salamat.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Salamat.
po.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.